The text message from my mother was crystal clear. Family meeting, 7 p.m., non-negotiable. I stood at my parents' front door, my hand hovering over the brass knocker, knowing whatever waited inside wouldn't be good. The perfectly manicured lawn and gleaming Mercedes in the driveway screamed success, the kind my family worshipped and I'd apparently failed to achieve. I am Melanie, the black sheep of the Gonzalez family. While my siblings collected degrees and accolades, like trading cards, I chose a different path, one that involved creating things with my hands and building something uniquely mine. The door swung open before I could knock. "You're late," my mother said, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Everyone's waiting." I checked my watch, 6:58 p.m. In my family, anything less than 10 minutes early was considered late. The living room fell silent as I entered. My sister Wendy sat primly on the edge of the leather sofa, her lawyer's briefcase by her feet. Louisa, fresh from her hospital shift, still wore her scrubs like a badge of honor. Nathan, my younger brother, didn't even look up from his phone. My father stood by the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, like a general preparing for battle. "Sit down, Melanie," he commanded, gesturing to the lone armchair facing everyone else. The setup reminded me of those intervention shows on TV. "What's this about?" I asked, remaining standing. Wendy reached into her briefcase and pulled out a document. "We've been discussing the family's future," she said, in her courtroom voice, "and we've come to a decision. A necessary one," my mother added, perching beside Louisa. "For the good of the family." The document made its way into my hands. The legal jargon was dense, but certain phrases jumped out. Formal dissolution of familial ties, relinquishment of inheritance rights, termination of family association. "You're disowning me?" The words came out as a whisper. "It's not personal." Nathan finally looked up. "It's business." "Business," I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. "I'm your daughter, your sister. How is this not personal?" "Your choices reflect poorly on the family name," my father said. "Your little craft hobby." "My business," I corrected. "Making trinkets in your apartment isn't a business," Louisa scoffed. "It's embarrassing. Do you know how it feels when my colleagues ask what my sister does?" "We've given you every opportunity," my mother continued. "The best schools, connections, resources, and you've thrown it all away to play with glue and glitter." I looked down at the document again, my hands steady despite the earthquake in my chest. Years of subtle jabs, disappointed sighs, and backhanded compliments had prepared me for this moment. They'd never understood me, never tried to. "Where do I sign?" My mother blinked, clearly expecting tears or pleading. "Melanie, if you just reconsider your choices." "Where do I sign?" Wendy pointed to the bottom of the page. "Initial here and sign here. There's a notary waiting in the study." 10 minutes later, it was done. I was no longer officially part of the Gonzalez family. The weight of their expectations, their judgment, their disapproval, all of it lifted from my shoulders. "I hope you understand," my father said, as I headed for the door. "This is for the best." I turned back one last time, taking in their faces, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. "You know what's funny? You're so worried about the family name, about success and reputation, but you have no idea what I've actually built. You never bothered to ask." "Melanie," my mother started. "No," I cut her off. "You've made your choice. Now you get to live with it." The door closed behind me with a soft click, far too gentle for the magnitude of what had just happened. My phone buzzed, a notification from my business account. Another major order had come in, pushing my monthly revenue well into 6 figures. Again, I smiled as I walked to my car, thinking about the stack of orders waiting to be filled, the upcoming collaboration with a major retailer, and the feature article being written about my innovative approach to sustainable crafting. They wanted to cut me off? Fine. They'd learned soon enough what they'd thrown away. Success, after all, is the sweetest revenge. As I drove away from the house I'd grown up in, I didn't feel sadness or anger. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Freedom. The freedom to be exactly who I was, without apology or explanation. Family, I realized, isn't about sharing a name or DNA. It's about who believes in you when no one else will. And I had people in my life who did exactly that. They just weren't the ones I was leaving behind. You did what? Mara nearly spilled her coffee across my workshop table. 3 days had passed since the disownment, and I'd finally gathered the courage to tell my best friend. Sign the papers without arguing, I said, carefully applying gold leaf to my latest creation. You should have seen their faces. They expected tears, begging, maybe a dramatic breakdown. But your inheritance, Mel, the family connections, all of it, just gone? I set down my tools and looked at her directly. What inheritance? A share in a car dealership I never wanted. The privilege of being told I'm a disappointment at every family dinner. Ezra burst through the door, his laptop clutched to his chest like a lifeline. My marketing guru and business partner always had perfect timing. Mel, you need to see this. He spun his laptop around. Our latest collection just got picked up by Style and Home magazine. They're calling you the artisan revolutionizing sustainable home decor. Mara peered at the screen. Holy shit, Mel. These numbers. Is that really how much you're making? That's just last month. Ezra grinned. Wait until they see what we've got planned next. The eco-friendly packaging initiative alone is going to... My phone buzzed, another order notification, then another, and another. What's happening? I asked Ezra. He refreshed his browser. The article just went live. We're trending on social media. The sustainable living community is going crazy over your recycled material techniques. I walked to the wall of shelves, displaying my latest pieces. Handcrafted home decor made entirely from reclaimed materials. Each piece told a story. Discarded wood transformed into elegant wall art. Salvaged metal reformed into striking sculptures. Forgotten glass reborn as stunning light fixtures. We need to scale up, Ezra said, already typing furiously. I'm getting inquiries from 3 major retailers. They want exclusive collections. Mara squeezed my shoulder. And your family has no idea. They never bothered to look, I said, picking up a piece I'd finished that morning. A delicate wind chime, made from sea glass and driftwood. Too busy being embarrassed by their crafty daughter to notice she built a 6-figure business from scratch. 7 figures actually, Ezra corrected, still typing. After these deals go through, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Melanie Gonzalez? A woman's crisp voice asked. This is Catherine Chen from Business Forward magazine. We're doing a feature on emerging entrepreneurs in the sustainable luxury market. Your name keeps coming up. I caught Ezra's eye. He gave me a thumbs up. I'd love to hear more, I said, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. We're particularly interested in your journey. Young female entrepreneur, innovative approach to sustainability, rapid growth. Would you be open to an interview? Cover story potential. I thought about my family's faces when they saw me on the cover of a national business magazine. Absolutely. When were you thinking? After setting up the interview, I turned to find both Mara and Ezra staring at me. What? Business Forward, Ezra whispered. Do you know how huge this is? Their features can make or break companies. Mara hugged me tight. This is it, Mel. This is your moment to show them all. I pulled away and picked up my tools again. No, this is my moment to show myself. I've got orders to fill. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I hired 3 assistants to help with production. Ezra expanded our online presence and negotiated deals with retailers. Mara helped me prepare for the Business Forward interview. Tell me again about your inspiration, she said one evening, playing reporter. I held up my latest piece, a chandelier made from broken mirrors and copper wire. I see beauty in broken things, in the pieces others throw away. Everything has potential if you look at it the right way. That's it, she said softly. That's what makes your work special. You're not just making pretty things, you're telling stories of transformation. My phone buzzed with a text from Ezra. Major department store wants to meet. Tomorrow, be ready. I looked around my workshop. Once a dusty garage, now a thriving studio. Orders lined the walls. Half-finished pieces waited on workbenches. The air smelled of wood polish and possibility. "You know what the best part is?" I said to Mara, who was admiring the chandelier. "I'm doing exactly what I've always wanted to do. What they called a hobby is now an empire in the making." "Speaking of them," Mara hesitated. "Have you heard anything?" "Not a word." I picked up my tools again. "But they will. Soon enough, everyone will." The chandelier caught the setting sun, sending fractured light dancing across the walls. Like my life, I thought. Broken pieces, creating something unexpectedly beautiful. "Time to get back to work," I said, reaching for another piece of salvaged copper. "These orders won't fill themselves." There she is. Catherine from Business Forward rushed toward me, her heels clicking against the studio floor. "Our cover girl." She thrust the magazine into my hands. My face stared back at me, surrounded by my most intricate pieces. The headline read, "The Queen of Sustainable Luxury: How Melanie Gonzalez Turned Trash into Treasure." "The response has been incredible," Catherine gushed. "Social media's exploding. 3 major networks want interviews." Ezra burst in, waving his phone. "Mel, the website crashed from traffic. We've got wait lists forming for every piece. And that department store deal? They doubled their initial offer." I traced my finger over the magazine cover, still struggling to believe it was real. The article detailed everything: my creative process, business model, revenue growth. Everything except my family's rejection. "The Today Show called," Catherine continued. "They want you for Monday morning. Prime slot." My phone lit up with a text from Wendy. "My first contact with family in 2 months. We need to talk. Urgent family matters." I showed the message to Mara, who'd been quietly organizing orders in the corner. "Funny how you're suddenly family again," she muttered. Another text arrived, this time from Louisa. "Saw the magazine. Why didn't you tell us? Call me ASAP." "Ignore them," Ezra said, glancing at my phone. "We've got bigger things to focus on. The Singapore collector wants to commission 3 custom pieces, 6 figures each." Catherine cleared her throat. "Speaking of figures, Forbes is interested in featuring you in their 30 under 30 list." The notifications kept coming. "Nathan, Mom's upset. You should call her." Then my father. "We should discuss your recent publicity." "Your story's inspiring people," Catherine said, oblivious to my family drama. "Young entrepreneur refuses to follow conventional path, proves everyone wrong. It's resonating. Especially the sustainability angle," Ezra added. "The video of you collecting materials from demolition sites went viral. People love seeing the transformation process." My phone buzzed again. My mother this time. "Family dinner, Sunday, 7 p.m. We have much to discuss." Mara read the message over my shoulder. "You're not going, right?" I set the phone down and picked up a piece of sea glass, turning it over in my hands. "Remember what you said about my work, Mara? About seeing beauty in broken things?" "Mel, no, they don't deserve." "I'm going." I cut her off. "But not for the reasons they think." The rest of the week was a whirlwind. The Today Show interview went viral. Orders flooded in faster than we could handle them. I hired 5 more assistants and leased additional workspace. "Look at these numbers," Ezra said during our Friday meeting. "We've exceeded our annual projection in just 2 months. The sustainable luxury market can't get enough of your work. The waiting list for custom pieces is 6 months long," one of my assistants added. "Even with the premium pricing." I nodded, only half listening. Sunday's dinner loomed in my mind. Then my phone lit up with an email that changed everything. "Holy shit," I whispered. Ezra looked up. "What?" "The Museum of Modern Art. They want to feature my work in their upcoming exhibition on sustainable art." The studio erupted in cheers. Mara hugged me tight. "See? This is what happens when you believe in yourself." "When do they want to meet?" Ezra asked, already pulling up his calendar. "Next week, in New York?" I laughed. "They're sending a private jet." Sunday arrived too quickly. As I pulled up to my parents' house, I noticed all their cars were already there. The whole family, right on time as usual. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Catherine. Breaking news. Your Business Forward feature just won us Magazine Story of the Year. Congratulations. I smiled, tucking the phone away. Perfect timing. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there, looking exactly as she had the night they disowned me. Except now her eyes held something new. Desperation. Melanie, darling. She stepped forward for a hug I didn't return. We've missed you. Behind her, I could see the rest of the family in the living room. Wendy with her briefcase again. Louisa, pretending to read something on her phone. Nathan actually looking at me this time. My father, still by his beloved fireplace. Have you? I asked, stepping past her into the house. Or did you miss what I represent now? The room fell silent. On the coffee table, I spotted copies of Business Forward. My face stared up at all of us, a testament to everything they'd dismissed. We should talk, my father said, his voice lacking its usual authority. About the future, about family. I sat in the same chair they'd put me in months ago, when they'd decided I wasn't good enough to be part of their family. Yes, I agreed, smoothing my designer dress, paid for with my little craft hobby money. Let's talk about the future. The silence in the living room was thick enough to cut. My mother bustled around, pouring tea nobody asked for, while my father cleared his throat repeatedly. Your work is impressive, Wendy finally said, tapping the magazine cover. The profit margins mentioned in the article are quite remarkable. Remarkable? I raised an eyebrow. I thought it was just a hobby. Playing with glue and glitter. Wasn't that what you called it, Louisa? Louisa shifted uncomfortably in her seat. We may have been hasty in our judgments. Hasty? I took a sip of tea. You disowned me. Had it notarized. About that, my father stepped forward. We've been discussing as a family, and we believe it's time to rectify that unfortunate situation. Unfortunate situation, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? Wendy reached for her briefcase, always the lawyer. I've drawn up papers to nullify the previous agreement. We can have it done today. The timing seems convenient, I said, watching their faces. Right after the magazine cover, the TV appearances, the museum exhibition announcement. Museum exhibition? Nathan perked up. Which museum? MoMA, I said casually, enjoying their shocked expressions. They're flying me to New York next week. Private jet. My mother dropped a teacup. It shattered on the hardwood floor, but nobody moved to clean it up. Melanie, my father's voice, took on the tone he used for important business deals. There's something else we need to discuss. The dealership is struggling. I finished for him. I know. I did my research. The shift toward electric vehicles hit you hard. Banks aren't as friendly as they used to be. The color drained from his face. How did you? I have good financial advisors now. They keep me informed about potential opportunities. Then you understand, Wendy jumped in. The family business needs to evolve. Your sustainable approach, your media presence, it could be exactly what we need. I laughed, the sound echoing in the tense room. So that's what this is about. You don't want me back. You want my success to save you. That's not fair, Louisa protested. We're family, are we? I stood up, walking to the fireplace, where family photos still hung. None of them including me. Because 3 months ago, in this very room, you made it very clear that I wasn't family anymore. People make mistakes, my mother said softly. We're trying to make it right. No, I turned to face them. You're trying to save yourselves. The dealership's facing bankruptcy, isn't it, Dad? And Wendy, that partner position you were promised. It fell through when your biggest client left. Louisa's hospital is cutting staff, and Nathan's research funding got pulled. They stared at me, shocked at how much I knew. Like I said, good advisors. We could help each other, my father insisted. Pool our resources. The Gonzalez name still means something in this city. My name means something, I corrected him. My work means something. And I did that without your help. Actually, I did it despite your active discouragement. My phone buzzed. A text from Ezra. Singapore collector doubled their offer. Again, says price is no object. I have a meeting, I said, gathering my things, with people who believed in me before the magazine covers and TV spots. Melanie, please. My mother grabbed my arm. We're sorry. We were wrong. What more can we say? I gently removed her hand. You know what's interesting about my work? I take broken things that people throw away and turn them into something valuable. But some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Some relationships, once shattered, stay that way. You're really going to hold a grudge? Nathan asked, after we've apologized. Apologized. I walked to the door. All I've heard are business propositions and convenient excuses. Not one of you has actually said you're proud of what I've built, or that you were wrong about my choices. You just want what I have now. That's not true. Wendy started. Save it. I cut her off. Keep your legal papers and your business proposals. I'm doing fine on my own. At the door, I turned back one last time. You know what the worst part is? If you'd supported me from the beginning, I would have helped you without hesitation. Family meant everything to me, but you taught me something valuable when you disowned me. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. I walked out, leaving them with their broken teacup and shattered pride. My phone buzzed again. Mara this time. How'd it go? Exactly as expected, I texted back. They want what I have, not who I am. Their loss, she replied. Studios packed with orders. Want to come help? Pizza's on me. I smiled, starting my car. On my way. Family dinner's overrated anyway. The sun was setting as I drove away, casting long shadows behind me. Like the pieces I worked with, I'd been discarded, but found my own way to shine. Some might call it karma. I called it justice. The text came 3 days later. Dinner tonight, please. Dad. I showed it to Ezra during our morning meeting. Think he'll actually say please in person? Don't go, he said, not looking up from his laptop. We've got the MoMA meeting tomorrow, and the Singapore contracts need reviewing. I'm going. I picked up a piece of twisted metal, considering its potential. But this time, I choose the place. I texted back, La Maison, 8 p.m. I'll make reservations. The response was immediate. That's a bit expensive. I'm buying, I replied. Bring Mom. La Maison was the kind of restaurant my parents used to brag about going to before the dealership started struggling. I arrived early, wearing a designer dress that cost more than my old monthly rent. They walked in right on time, looking uncomfortable. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. Ms. Gonzalez, your usual table is ready. The chef sends his regards and asks if you'd like the special tasting menu he's prepared. My parents' eyes widened. I smiled. That would be lovely, Thomas. Thank you. Once seated, my father cleared his throat. Your usual table. I invest in local businesses, I said, sipping my water. This place included. The chef does amazing things with sustainable ingredients. My mother fidgeted with her napkin. Melanie, about Sunday. Let's order first. I cut her off as the sommelier approached. The 82 Bordeaux, please. The whole bottle. My father's face paled. I knew he recognized the 4-figure wine. Now, I said, after our glasses were filled. What's so urgent? They exchanged glances before my father spoke. The bank called in our loans, all of them. We have 30 days to either refinance or sell the dealership. And, my mother jumped in. We've explored every option. Nobody's lending in this market, not to car dealerships, especially not to dealerships without a clear transition plan to electric vehicles, I added. The first course arrived, tiny works of art on pristine plates. My parents barely touched theirs. We need help, my father said finally. The words seemed to physically pain him. Your help. Financial help, I clarified. Not family reconciliation. Both, my mother insisted. We were wrong, Melanie, so wrong. Seeing what you've built, what you've become, what I've become. I set down my fork. I'm exactly who I was 3 months ago. The only difference is now I have money and influence. The second course arrived. My father still hadn't touched his first. We're not just asking for money, he said. We want to merge the businesses. Your vision, your sustainable approach, it could revolutionize the dealership. Electric vehicles, eco-friendly practices, and save the family name, I finished. That's what this is really about, isn't it? My mother reached for my hand. I let her take it, watching her face. We're losing everything, Melanie. The house, the business, our reputation. Like I lost my family. She withdrew her hand. The main course arrived, perfectly cooked Wagyu beef. The chef stopped by personally to check on us. Everything is perfect, Antonio, I assured him. The new sustainable menu is brilliant. After he left, my father leaned forward. How much? Excuse me? To save the dealership, how much do you want? I laughed. The sound drawing glances from nearby tables. You still don't get it. This isn't about money. It never was. Then what do you want? He demanded. Frustration breaking through his carefully maintained facade. I wanted you to love me for who I am, I said quietly. I wanted you to be proud of me before the magazine covers and TV spots. I wanted a family who saw my value without a dollar sign attached to it. The dessert arrived, a spectacular creation of spun sugar and gold leaf. My mother started crying silently. We can change, she whispered. We can be better. I signaled for the check. Maybe you can. But here's the thing. I don't need you to anymore. I don't need your approval, your connections, or your name. I built something beautiful out of what you threw away. The bill came. I handed over my black card without looking at the total. So that's it? My father asked. You'll let the family business die? Let us lose everything? I stood up, smoothing my dress. You taught me an important lesson when you disowned me. Business is business. It's not personal. Melanie, please, my mother started. I have an early flight to New York tomorrow. I cut her off. The museum's sending a car at 6. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's already paid for. I walked out of La Maison, leaving them with their cold food and colder reality. My phone buzzed, Mara asking how it went. They finally said please. I texted back. Too bad it was for the wrong reasons. The night air was cool on my face as I headed home. Tomorrow I'd be discussing my art in one of the world's premier museums. Tonight, I'd left my parents with the bill they never saw coming. The true cost of throwing away family for the sake of appearances. They offered what? Mara nearly fell off her chair in my New York hotel suite. 20 million, I repeated, still staring at the contract MoMA's lawyers had presented for a permanent installation and consulting role on their sustainable art initiative. Holy shit, Ezra whispered, pacing the room. That's not including the Singapore deals or the retail contracts. My phone buzzed. Wendy again. Dad's meeting with bankruptcy lawyers tomorrow. Please call. I ignored it, focusing on the Manhattan skyline outside my window. The museum's private car would arrive in an hour for the final contract signing. Your family's blowing up my phone too, Mara said. Your sister Louisa came by the studio yesterday. What did she want? To explain their side. Said they're about to lose the house. Nathan's moving back in with them since his research position got cut. Another text from my mother. Please come home. We need to talk as a family. Ezra stopped pacing. You know what's ironic? If they hadn't disowned you, your business wouldn't have grown this fast. You channeled all that hurt into your work. Speaking of work, Mara picked up a piece from my latest collection. A phoenix rising from twisted metal and broken glass. This is different, darker. It's for the museum installation, I said. I'm calling it Family Ties. My phone rang. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. You could save them, Ezra said quietly. 20 million would clear their debts, with plenty left over. I could, I agreed. But should I? Mara stood up, walking to the phoenix sculpture. Remember what you told me when you started this, about seeing beauty in broken things? This is different. Is it? She turned the piece, watching light play through the glass. Maybe this is your chance to transform something broken into something beautiful. My phone buzzed again. A text from Nathan. They're auctioning off Mom's jewelry tomorrow, even her wedding ring. They made their choice, I said. But my voice wavered. Ezra sat down, pulling up something on his laptop. Look at this. I've been running numbers. You could buy the dealership for pennies on the dollar right now. Transform it into an electric vehicle showroom. Your sustainable brand, plus their existing infrastructure. It could work, Mara added. But only if you want it to. A knock at the door interrupted us. A courier, with a thick envelope. Inside was a letter from my father, handwritten. Melanie, I've written this letter 100 times in my head. Nothing sounds right. Nothing can excuse what we did. You were always the strongest of us, the most genuine. We were too blind to see it. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a chance to be the father I should have been. To be the family you deserved. We're losing everything, but that's not why I'm writing. We lost what mattered most the day we signed those papers. We lost you. I'm proud of you. Not because of your success, but because of who you are. Who you've always been. Love. Dad. The paper shook in my hands. Mel? Mara asked softly. He said he's proud of me, I whispered. For the first time in my life. Ezra closed his laptop. The museum contract doesn't need to be signed today. We could postpone. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Louisa. Mom's in the hospital. Stress and exhaustion. She keeps asking for you. I looked at the phoenix sculpture. Its broken pieces, forming something new, something stronger. Call the car, I said. We're making a stop before the museum. Where? Mara asked, though her smile suggested she already knew. The bank. I need to make some arrangements. And then, Ezra was already dialing. I picked up the phoenix, carefully wrapping it. Then we're going to save a family. But on my terms. What are you thinking? Mara asked. A new company, sustainable luxury vehicles, electric showrooms with my art installations. A complete reinvention of what the family business means. With you in charge, Ezra added. With me in charge, I agreed. They want to be family again. Fine, but we do it my way. No more hiding who I am. No more shame about being different. The prodigal daughter returns, Mara smiled, but this time, she's the one with the power. I looked at my father's letter again. Sometimes the things we break can be rebuilt stronger, but first, everyone has to admit they're broken. The car arrived as I finished packing the phoenix. It seemed fitting. This piece about resurrection would now witness one. Ready? Mara asked. I nodded, tucking the letter into my pocket. Time to show them what family really means and what it costs. We headed down to the waiting car, the phoenix carefully cradled in my arms. Its glass wings caught the sunlight, sending fragments of light dancing across the walls. Broken pieces coming together to create something unexpected, something beautiful, just like family should be. The hospital waiting room fell silent as I walked in, the phoenix sculpture still in my arms. My siblings looked up from their phones, their faces a mix of surprise and relief. You came, Wendy said, standing. Where is she? I asked. Room 304. Louisa answered. Dad's with her. Nathan stepped forward. The doctors say it's mostly exhaustion. And, save it, I cut him off. We're having a family meeting, now. Conference room down the hall. All of you. They exchanged glances, but followed me. The phoenix found its temporary home on the conference room table, its shadows dancing across their tired faces. Before we see Mom, I said, pulling out a stack of papers, we're going to get some things straight. Is that? Wendy started, recognizing legal documents. A new company structure? Yes. I laid out the papers. The dealership gets restructured into Phoenix Electric, sustainable luxury vehicles. I'll clear the debts, invest in electric infrastructure, and integrate my art installations into the showrooms. Their eyes widened at the numbers. But, I continued, there are conditions. Of course there are, Nathan muttered. First, I'm CEO, non-negotiable. Dad becomes chairman emeritus, advisory role only. Each of you gets shares based on your contribution to the new vision, not family ties. Wendy reached for the papers. I pulled them back. I'm not finished. Second condition. The old family dynamics die today. No more judgment about life choices. No more forcing people into boxes they don't fit in. Is this revenge? Louisa asked quietly. No. I picked up the phoenix. It's resurrection. But first, you need to understand what you did. I faced each of them. Wendy, you drafted the papers to disown me. Louisa, you mocked my little hobby every chance you got. Nathan, you couldn't even look at me that night. Each of you chose status over sister. The room fell silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights. We were wrong, Wendy whispered. Say it louder. We were wrong. She stood up, tears in her eyes. I was wrong. I let my own insecurities about success blind me. You built something amazing while I chased other people's definitions of achievement. Louisa joined her. I was jealous. You had the courage to follow your passion while I followed expectations. I'm so sorry, Mel. Nathan remained seated. I was a coward, he said simply. I knew they were wrong about you, but I stayed quiet. It was easier. I set the phoenix down. That's a start. Now, about Mom and Dad. The door opened. My father stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I heard everything, he said. The nurses said you were here, and I... He trailed off, staring at the phoenix. Dad, no. He held up his hand. My turn. He walked to the sculpture, touching it gently. This is beautiful, like everything you create. I was too proud, too stuck in my ways to see it. To see you. The company, Wendy started. Isn't what matters, he cut her off. Your mother's upstairs wondering if she'll ever see her daughter again. Not because of the money or the business, but because we threw away our child for nothing. I felt tears threatening, but held them back. Not nothing. You threw me away for appearances, for status, for the family name. And look where that got us. He gestured to the hospital walls. Our name means nothing now, but you built something real, something meaningful. He picked up the papers, reading quickly. These terms, they're more than fair, more than we deserve. Dad, you'd be giving up control, Nathan pointed out. Good, he said firmly. Look what my control did to this family. He turned to me. The company is yours. The family, that's up to you. I took a deep breath. Mom first. Then we sign. We rode the elevator in silence. Outside room 304, I stopped them. One more thing, I said. That disownment paper, I want it destroyed. Publicly, at the first board meeting of Phoenix Electric. Done, they said in unison. My mother was awake, looking small in the hospital bed. When she saw me, she started crying. My baby, she reached out. I'm so sorry, so sorry. I took her hand, feeling its trembles. I know, Mom, I know. We can't take it back, she said through tears. But can we try again, please? I looked around at my family, broken, humbled, but here. Like the materials I worked with, sometimes the most damaged pieces could be transformed into something stronger. Yes, I said, squeezing her hand. But this time, we do it right. All of us. The phoenix on the conference room table caught the setting sun, sending ribbons of light through the hospital window. Sometimes, I thought, resurrection comes at a price, but if everyone's willing to pay it, the result can be beautiful. The Phoenix Electric showroom gleamed under spotlight and camera flashes. My latest installation, a massive chandelier made from recycled car parts, dominated the entrance. Reporters jostled for position as my father cut the ribbon. And with that, he announced, "We welcome you to the future of sustainable luxury." Mara appeared at my elbow. Channel 7 wants an interview with the CEO. The CEO is busy admiring her work. I smiled, watching potential customers stream in. Ezra rushed over with his tablet. Pre-orders are insane. The sustainable luxury market is eating this up. Your art installations are trending on every platform. My mother touched my arm gently, a new habit she'd developed, as if making sure I was real. Melanie, darling, The governor's asking about commissioning a piece for the State House. Tell him to call my assistant. I winked. I'm very exclusive these days. Across the showroom, Wendy was explaining our innovative financing programs to a group of investors. Louisa had taken a part-time position, heading our medical transport division. Even Nathan had found his place, leading our research partnership with local universities. Ms. Gonzalez, a reporter, pushed forward. How does it feel to revolutionize a traditional family business? Before I could answer, my father stepped in. My daughter didn't just revolutionize the business, he said proudly. She saved it by being exactly who she always was. The reporter's eyebrows shot up. Even after the family drama, our sources say there was quite a rift. I met my father's eyes. Sometimes rifts create space for new foundations. Speaking of foundations, Ezra interrupted. Tablet extended. The Sustainable Arts Foundation called. They want you to head their board. My mother squeezed my hand. Go, she whispered. We can handle things here. I shook my head. Family first, business second. That's our new motto, remember. The showroom continued filling with people, admiring both the vehicles and the art. Each piece told a story of transformation, from the chandelier above to the small phoenix sculpture still perched on my desk. Mel, Mara called out, your sister's looking for you. Something about the community outreach program? I found Louisa in the conference room, surrounded by blueprints. We got approved, she announced. The Youth Art Center can break ground next month. In the old dealership lot? Where else? She smiled. From car sales to creating opportunities, very on brand for the new US. Nathan poked his head in. Mom's getting emotional again. Dad's trying to handle it, but I followed him to find our mother wiping tears, surrounded by concerned guests. Mom, I touched her shoulder. You okay? She pulled me into a hug. I just never imagined all of this. You've made something so beautiful, inside and out. We made it, I corrected her. Once we stopped breaking things and started fixing them. Wendy joined us, champagne in hand. To fixing things, she raised her glass. And to my sister, who taught us that sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we almost throw away. The evening wound down. As the last guests left, my family gathered under the chandelier. Its shadows danced across our faces, broken pieces creating patterns none of us could have predicted. The disownment papers, my father said suddenly. We never did destroy them publicly. I walked to my office, returning with a document that had changed everything. Actually, I said, I had other plans for these. I handed pieces to each family member. Together, we walked to the art installation in the center of the showroom. A massive glass furnace, part of my live demonstration space. The phoenix rises, I said, opening the furnace door. But first, the old has to burn. One by one, we fed the papers into the flames. As they burned, I reached for the glass-blowing tools. Watch, I told them, gathering the molten glass mixed with the paper's ashes. This is how you make beauty from pain. Hours later, a new piece sat cooling. A small family of glass figures, their cores containing the ashes of our worst moment, transformed into something new. It's us, my mother whispered. It's who we are now, I corrected. Not perfect, not unbroken, but stronger where we were broken. Ezra and Mara found us still there, admiring the piece. Ready to call it a night, boss? Ezra asked. I looked at my family, really looked at them. At my father's proud smile, my mother's gentle touch, my siblings' relaxed poses. At how far we'd come from that night, they'd tried to disown me. Actually, I said, I think we're just getting started. The chandelier above caught the last light of day, sending fragments of rainbow across the showroom floor. Like family, like art, like life itself, sometimes the most beautiful things come from knowing exactly which pieces to keep, which to transform, and which to let go. Come on, I told them all. Let's go home. And this time, I knew exactly what that meant.
Greetings. My name is Janice. I find myself alone in this world, which is why I am choosing to share my story here. I've seen my husband, Raymond, transform into someone unrecognizable, a person who brings dread into my life. I often find myself envious of those who are blissfully married to their soulmates, living joyfully as I once believed I would be with Raymond, but reality proved otherwise. Our marriage began on a foundation of love. Raymond and I both held stable jobs and enjoyed a robust relationship before our wedding. However, things took an unexpected turn soon after our vows. Raymond quit his job abruptly without any prior discussion. He explained that his job was making him depressed and burnt out, and he desperately needed a break. He promised to look for work soon, but in the meantime, the responsibility of supporting us fell on my shoulders. Though I expressed my frustration about being kept in the dark, Raymond dismissed my concerns, assuring me it would only be for a few months. As time passed, our situation did not improve. I had to take on 3 jobs just to keep us afloat, while Raymond spent his days playing video games, contributing nothing to our household duties. Despite my efforts, our financial situation worsened to the point where we struggled to pay rent. We were eventually forced to seek help from Raymond's parents, Ethan and Olivia, who were stunned to learn of Raymond's unemployment. Raymond's parents revealed a troubling pattern. This wasn't the first time Raymond had quit his job and relied on others for support. In the past, they had to coerce him back to work, threatening to cut him off financially. They had hoped he had changed after meeting me, but it seemed he had reverted to his old ways. They expressed doubt about his claims of depression, suggesting instead that he was manipulating the situation for financial gain. This revelation shocked me, as the Raymond I knew before our marriage had always been diligent and responsible. His parents sternly warned him to find employment and cease burdening me. They emphasized that I deserved happiness and should not be exploited. Raymond promised to rectify the situation, but a lingering doubt remained about whether true change was possible. I was left feeling betrayed and isolated, grappling with a reality far from the dreams I once cherished, sharing my story in hopes of finding solace and understanding. As a kind gesture, you've been offered a complimentary stay at one of our properties. However, you must commit to securing employment soon, as your continued undesirable behavior could result in eviction. I gratefully accepted their offer, thanking them profusely, and assured them that Raymond would address his issues. Raymond also promised his parents he would seek a job, but instead, he deceived them about being employed while I was the one diligently supporting our family. I kept silent about this, motivated by my love for him and not wanting to add pressure. Over time, our financial situation deteriorated. I struggled to make ends meet, while Raymond idly passed the days. He even became irate when I couldn't earn more each month, urging me not to take any days off to avoid losing a day's income. Exhausted and feeling isolated, as Raymond disliked when I spent time with friends, I naively overlooked the reality due to my deep affection for him. This continued for an entire year, during which I tirelessly worked and diminished my well-being. Eventually, I reached my breaking point and took a day off from both of my jobs. When Raymond realized I was home, he confrontationally asked why I wasn't at work earning money. I responded that I couldn't keep pushing myself to the brink of exhaustion. He angrily retorted that I had no right to take a break. In frustration, I countered, highlighting the unfairness of my relentless work and his enjoyment of the fruits of my labor while isolating me socially to prevent spending. I insisted on taking the day for myself, which led to me leaving the house in tears to seek some respite. I wandered the city, engaging in some window shopping, though I had little money to spend. The year had drained my savings, primarily due to Raymond's actions, leaving me increasingly resentful towards him. His affection had faded long ago, replaced only by criticisms about my time management and insufficient income. Unsure of what else to do, I returned home in the evening only to find the door bolted from the inside. Confused, I knocked, but Raymond refused to answer. After persistent knocking and shouting due to the freezing cold, Raymond finally responded but refused to open the door, accusing me of disrespect and ignoring his earlier warnings, stating that I needed to learn a lesson and wouldn't be allowed inside the house that day. This left me stunned and hurt, as I realized the gravity of the situation I was in. After taking a day off work, I faced an unexpected and harsh reaction from Raymond. He locked me out of our home as a form of punishment and ignored all my attempts to communicate, telling me, "Knock all you want, Janice, I'm not letting you in. Consider this a lesson." He then ceased all communication, leaving me alone and shivering in the cold. Feeling foolish but hopeful, I waited outside, believing he might calm down and let me in. However, as hours passed, the harsh reality of his abusiveness became undeniable. Completely isolated, with no friends nearby and my family far away, I was left without shelter as the cold intensified. After some time, I decided to turn to the only support I thought I might have, my in-laws. Shaking from the cold, I drove to their house, desperate for help. Upon arriving, Ethan, my father-in-law, opened the door. His surprise quickly turned to concern as he saw my distraught state. Through tears, I explained that Raymond had locked me out because I took a day off from my dual jobs to recover from exhaustion. I had merely gone window shopping, a small break from my relentless routine because I couldn't afford to buy anything. Ethan was shocked. "Janice, why on earth are you working 3 jobs? Raymond told us he was making enough money for both of you. He even mentioned he wanted you to quit your job and relax." Through sobs, I revealed the truth, that Raymond hadn't been truthful about his employment status and had been living off my income while pretending otherwise to his parents. "He's been lying to you all this time," I admitted. "He hasn't applied for any jobs since he left his last one and constantly pressures me for money. He hates it when I take a day off because it means less money coming in." As I shared my ordeal, the reality of the situation dawned on his parents. They were appalled to learn about the manipulation and lies and the extent to which their son had taken advantage of my loyalty and hard work. The pain and embarrassment of my situation overwhelmed me, and I broke down completely in front of them, revealing the full extent of my suffering under Raymond's abusive behavior. My emotions were raw and heavy as Ethan expressed outrage, and Olivia tenderly comforted me. Once I had collected myself, Ethan assured me with firm resolve, "Janice, you are not alone. We will help you navigate through this. It's unfathomable how our son has turned out like this. Don't worry, we'll figure something out." Admitting my fears, I said, "I don't even want to be in the same house as Raymond anymore. I'm at a loss about what to do next." "Don't stress about those details," Ethan responded confidently. "Let's head back to the house together. It's time Raymond learns the gravity of his actions." When we arrived, Olivia opted to stay back, fearing she might lose her temper and confront Raymond physically. At the house, Raymond refused to open the door despite our knocking. Through the closed door, I could hear him stubbornly refuse to let me in. "As long as I want, Janice. You didn't listen to me about taking a break, so now I won't listen to you." His callousness was shocking. "Raymond, this is insane. It was just one day, a break I desperately needed. That doesn't mean I should be locked out for hours." His response was chilling. "You wanted a break? Fine. Spend the night outside. Take all the time you need." At my wit's end, I demanded he open the door, and Ethan intervened with a stern ultimatum. "Open the door, Raymond, or I swear I'll break it down myself." The threat of his father's anger silenced Raymond momentarily before he finally opened the door, his nerves palpable. Seeing us, his anxiety heightened, especially under his father's stern gaze. Raymond attempted a casual greeting, which Ethan cut short. "Drop the act, Raymond. Explain yourself. Why did you lock Janice out? Did you forget who owns this house?" Trying to downplay his actions, Raymond stammered, "It's not what it looks like, Dad. We were just joking around, right, Janice?" I couldn't hold back any longer. It's exactly what it looks like, Ethan. He locked me out because I took a day off. While I've been working tirelessly, he's been living off my earnings and doing nothing. Ethan turned to his son with disappointment etched on his face. Raymond, why are you lying? You left your job without discussing it with Janice. You promised to work on yourself for your family. What's going on? Caught in his web of lies, Raymond scrambled for an excuse. Dad, I swear it's not like that. I've been looking for jobs. It's just tough out there right now. I've sent out lots of applications. My resolve hardened in that moment. I had endured enough of Raymond's deceit and manipulation. No longer would I remain silent or passive. It was time to stand up for myself and expose the truth of my situation. Raymond underestimated my strength and resilience, but I was determined to hold him accountable for his actions. As he fumbled to salvage his crumbling facade, I knew the truth would finally come to light, and I was ready to fight for the respect and treatment I deserved. But I haven't heard back from any of them yet, Raymond defensively claimed about his job applications. Oh, really? Well, why don't you show us all the applications you've sent? That way we can see if you're telling the truth, Ethan countered skeptically. Why do you need to see proof? Don't you trust your son? It's ridiculous. I don't need to prove anything. I've sent out plenty of applications, Raymond retorted, clearly agitated. However, I knew the truth. Raymond hadn't sent out any applications. After quitting his last job, he had no intention of finding another. He planned to live off my earnings indefinitely. Ethan sensed the dishonesty too. It was apparent that Raymond was avoiding the truth. He hasn't sent out any applications, Ethan. That's why he can't show them to you, I interjected. There was even a vacancy at my office, and I suggested he apply. He just yelled at me, refusing to take any direction. Raymond's father, growing increasingly frustrated by his son's evasiveness and lack of initiative, sternly said, Raymond, your mother and I allowed you to stay here, hoping you'd turn your life around. We were under the impression you were working and contributing to the household. Now it's clear you've been letting Janice work to support you, while you do nothing but spend her money. You haven't kept your part of the agreement, so I'm going to have to evict you from this house. What? Dad, no. Please don't do this, Janice. Look what you've gotten us into. Now we're both going to lose our home, Raymond panicked, trying to shift the blame. There's no need to yell at her, Raymond. Janice will either stay here with us or in this house by herself. You are the one who will be leaving, Ethan firmly corrected him. This is unfair. Janice and I are a couple. You can't just separate us. You can't split up a married couple. I go where my wife goes, and that's final. If Janice wants to stay married, she has to take me wherever she goes, Raymond protested desperately. Actually, Raymond, I won't be staying married to you, I declared, having reached my breaking point. I decided a while ago. I will be filing for a divorce. Raymond was stunned, visibly shaken by my declaration and his father's threats. His entire demeanor shifted as he realized the gravity of his situation. All his life, he had used people to support his lifestyle, always dodging his responsibilities. But this was a pivotal moment. He was finally being held accountable. In a desperate plea, he broke down. Janice, please don't do this. You can't be serious. Are you going to throw away years of our relationship over this one mistake? I know I shouldn't have locked you out. But it was too late for regrets. Raymond's actions had consequences, and both his parents and I were united in our resolve to no longer enable his irresponsible behavior. It was time for a change, and for Raymond, it was a harsh awakening to a new reality that he could no longer avoid. It was just one day. We can sort this out, Raymond pleaded, trying to minimize the gravity of the situation. No, Raymond, it wasn't just one day. You've been financially exploiting me for the entire past year. You've drained my savings and contributed nothing, not even helping around the house. You've just complained every time I asked for help. A whole year of this, I can't take it anymore, I countered, my resolve firm. Janice, you're being unreasonable. Let's just talk this out. Look, I'll start applying for jobs tomorrow, I promise. Once I get something, we could even start therapy, right? We can fix this. He bargained, a note of desperation in his voice. I know you well enough to understand that you won't follow through. You've ignored my suggestions and disrespected me continuously over the last year. If I give in now, you'll just revert to your old ways once things settle down," I replied, weary of the repetitive cycle. Raymond turned to his father for support. "Dad, please help me convince her. See, I'm willing to change, but she won't listen." Ethan, however, was unwavering. "Raymond, Janice is doing the right thing by leaving. You don't have the right to keep her here against her will. She's making a sound decision, and I don't want her to waste her life anymore with someone who mistreats her like you have. Janice, why don't you come stay at our place until Raymond moves out? I'll wait here while you pack your things," Ethan offered, giving me a chance to leave the toxic environment. I seized the opportunity and quickly gathered my belongings. As promised, Ethan waited for me downstairs, ignoring Raymond's attempts to sway him. Knowing I couldn't trust Raymond after everything that had happened, and fearing it would be too risky to stay any longer, I accepted Ethan's offer. Downstairs, Raymond tried to physically block my exit, but Ethan's stern threat to call the police made him step aside. Back at my in-laws, Olivia immediately embraced me. Her warmth brought me to tears. It had been so long since I'd felt genuine affection. Olivia reassured me, "You can stay here as long as you need to." Deciding to stay with them for a while, I didn't rush into filing for divorce. I needed to ensure Raymond would be self-sufficient to avoid any obligations like alimony. I figured giving him a month to find employment would suffice. In the meantime, I transferred half of our joint account funds into my account and vowed not to deposit any more into it. Despite his efforts to reconcile, showing up repeatedly at his parents' place to plead for forgiveness, we remained firm. This time, even his mother openly criticized him for his failures. This stand wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about reclaiming my life and dignity and establishing a boundary Raymond had long ignored. Olivia had harsh words for Raymond, branding him a poor excuse for a man. Raymond's tearful pleas for forgiveness were, in a way, a satisfying vindication of my long-standing grievances. As the month wore on, Raymond was compelled to leave the family home. He resisted, nearly causing his parents to involve the police. It seemed he couldn't grasp that his parents were seriously evicting him. After he moved out, Raymond began couch surfing among friends, who quickly grew wary of hosting him indefinitely due to his parasitic tendencies. He struggled to secure a decent job given his reputation and work ethic, but eventually managed to find something to make ends meet. As soon as Raymond settled into a new place, I initiated the divorce proceedings. The process was straightforward. Raymond couldn't afford legal representation and resigned himself to the inevitable separation. Fortunately, there was no requirement for alimony due to our minimal income disparity. I was able to quit one of my jobs since I no longer had the burden of supporting Raymond, and his parents generously allowed me to stay with them without charge, helping me to start rebuilding my savings. Our divorce concluded without much conflict, mainly because neither of us had the resources or the will to draw out proceedings. Raymond apologized repeatedly, but I could not find it in me to forgive him after everything that had transpired. I've since moved into a 3-bedroom apartment with a roommate, and life is gradually improving. I maintain close ties with Olivia and Ethan, who have warmly welcomed me into their family. They too have not forgiven Raymond, and it appears unlikely that their relationship with him will ever return to what it once was. This new chapter is one of healing and rediscovery, as I build a life surrounded by those who truly care for me. Hello, I'm Pamela, a 30-year-old. I've been married to Patrick for 3 years now. We don't have children yet. Our lives took a significant turn following the unexpected death of Patrick's father, Jesse. At the time, we were residing in a different state, and the news of Jesse's sudden heart attack came as a complete shock. During the funeral, Patrick's uncle subtly hinted that Patrick, being the youngest and only son, was expected to return home to be closer to family and help his mother cope. A few months later, Patrick revealed that he had secured a transfer to an office closer to his family home. He made this decision on his own and informed me afterward, which upset me because such a major decision should have involved both of us. When I expressed my frustration, Patrick apologized and explained that he anticipated my objections. He admitted knowing that I have a strained relationship with his mother, Mary, which is mutual. When we lived farther away, our visits to his parents were limited to extended holidays, mostly due to our work commitments. Mary often complained about our infrequency, comparing us to Amanda and Diane, Patrick's sisters who lived nearby and visited often. Despite the distances and costs involved, Patrick always defended our situation. Our relationship with Mary had always been a bit tense but manageable. However, Mary's main grievance with me centered around us not having children yet. She had once bluntly questioned this during a summer visit, embarrassingly focusing on my ability to bear children, even comparing me. I decided to join Patrick, reasoning that we wouldn't be living together continuously anyway. To my surprise, Mary seemed genuinely pleased with my decision. 3 weeks later, she invited me over for tea, marking the first time I accepted such an invitation from her, albeit reluctantly. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, Mary and Amanda were there to greet me. "Pamela, it's been so long. Why haven't you visited since moving here?" Amanda asked, her tone laced with sarcasm. Inside, I was already regretting my decision to come. Mary chimed in, almost cheerfully. "I was so happy when you decided to move closer, but it seems I was mistaken. You don't like me, do you?" I wanted to affirm her suspicion just to see her reaction, but of course I held back. "I don't dislike you. It's just that I've been feeling unwell due to adjusting to the new environment," I explained, which was partly true. I had been resting at home due to fatigue, and Patrick hadn't mentioned this visit to me. Why was I here today, just to endure their harsh words? Mary quickly accused me of disliking her, but wasn't it the other way around? How were we supposed to get along under these conditions? Amanda sharply interjected, "How can you speak to your mother-in-law like that? Apologize to her. Say you're sorry." I expected Mary to respond with anger, but her reply caught me off guard. "You're right. I have been mean. I'm sorry, Pamela. I'm also sorry about the comments regarding children. I was being nosy." I braced myself for a lecture, anticipating some hidden snark, but there was none. Even Amanda looked surprised. "All I wanted was to hold a grandchild," Mary confessed. She explained that Amanda's husband was infertile and Diane seemed to have fertility issues, so she had pinned her hopes on Patrick and me, despite knowing about Amanda and Diane's struggles. Patrick and I had discussed having children and were considering it, so I asked for some patience. "Please, just give us some time," I said, bowing my head slightly. Despite everything, I couldn't shake off my sense of duty. "I'm sorry," I added, "but do visit us sometimes." After that, Mary and Amanda resumed watching TV and sipping their tea as if the earlier tension had never happened. "I like this announcer," Mary remarked about her favorite local TV personality. "She's so energetic and bright." Watching them and the TV, I felt a pang of regret. Maybe if I had been more outgoing, things could have been different with Mary and her family. It was a fleeting, somewhat naive thought. I was relieved to have shared my feelings earlier that day, hoping it might lead to better relations. Yet, my optimism was short-lived. That evening, Patrick stormed in, visibly upset. "I heard from Mom that you said you have no intention of getting along. She was crying, Pamela. What did you say to her?" I was stunned by his reaction. Just earlier, he had left with a smile, and now he seemed to be accusing me of something entirely different. "Patrick, there's been a misunderstanding," I tried to clarify. "I told her it's difficult for me to be friends given our current relationship. How does that translate to me not wanting to get along?" I was scared now. Patrick seemed to fully believe Mary's twisted version of the story. His earlier smile now appeared deceptive, and I didn't know how to navigate this. I tried to explain further, but he wasn't convinced. Then, my phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. "After all the effort of moving here, weren't you prepared to make it work?" If you're here with us, you need to be a bit more patient." Patrick glanced at me as if echoing Amanda's words. I moved here because I cared about being with him, not just to appease Mary and Amanda. Facing Patrick, I held his gaze and said, "It's clear that Mary and the others might never approve of me. Maybe you should consider someone she likes more." The word divorce slipped out before I could catch it, and for the first time, Patrick looked genuinely alarmed. "Wait, hold on. How did we jump to divorce? I just want you to get along better with my family," he said, bewildered by the turn of the conversation. He couldn't grasp that his family might never accept me, which left me equally baffled. However, Patrick seemed determined to resolve the misunderstanding. The next day, he returned late from work and relayed his conversation with his mother. She admitted there was a misunderstanding and apologized. "What a fuss," he said. He also mentioned that Mary's birthday was approaching and suggested, "How about we celebrate her birthday at a fancy restaurant?" The sudden shift from turmoil to talks of celebration left me perplexed, but it was clear Patrick was making an effort to mend fences, even if the path seemed incredibly rocky. Patrick suggested that if we presented the birthday dinner as my idea, perhaps it could positively shift his mother's perception of me. Though I was skeptical of Mary's ability to appreciate such gestures sincerely, given her complex personality, I agreed to make the restaurant reservation. I invited Amanda and the others, specifying a table for 8. Patrick consented, but as the date drew nearer, a sense of unease grew within me. Patrick had been distant lately, giving only curt, indifferent responses to my attempts at conversation, which made me feel increasingly isolated. On the day of the dinner, we arrived at the restaurant to find Mary, Amanda, and their spouses already gathered. The host showed Patrick and me to our table, casting a questioning glance that only added to my discomfort. "Happy birthday, Mary," I greeted her cheerfully, trying to bridge the gap. However, Mary didn't even acknowledge me. Instead, she turned to the others, thanking them for joining her celebration. It felt like a deliberate snub. Amanda seemed confused. "I thought today was a family gathering," she remarked, looking at me with a brief, puzzled expression. Diane, noticing the tension, looked over with concern. At that moment, I realized I was being deliberately excluded. Resolved to not let it ruin my evening, I decided to keep to myself and leave early. Just as I was settling into this plan, a staff member approached our table with an awkward demeanor. "I'm sorry, but the reservation was actually made for 7 people today," he informed us. Confused, I responded, "I distinctly reserved for 8. Could there be a mistake?" "No, it should definitely be for 8, I pressed, recounting my conversation over the phone. "Oh yes, but about a week ago we received a call from a gentleman asking to change the number to 7, the worker explained. Stunned, I turned to Patrick, looking for an explanation. His response floored me. "Yes, please, service for 7. Everyone's here now," he stated plainly, confirming the change himself. At that moment, I felt a mix of betrayal and disbelief. Patrick's actions made it clear that despite his words, his commitments to smoothing family tensions were superficial at best. The realization that he had manipulated the situation without my knowledge was deeply unsettling, casting a shadow over what was supposed to be a festive family gathering. I stood there, stunned, as Patrick turned to me with an accusatory glare. "I heard from Mom that you've been undermining our family, saying I don't earn enough and that I'm insensitive. You had a lot to say, huh?" It turned out that a week ago, when Patrick contacted Mary about the dinner reservation, she had filled his ears with all sorts of falsehoods. Blinded by anger and believing her, he had called the restaurant, pretending to be me, and reduced the reservation from 8 to 7. The staff, recognizing the family surname, didn't question the change. I couldn't fathom how Patrick could be so easily misled in such a brief span. With this realization, I questioned my presence there. When I confronted Patrick, demanding he apologize to everyone present and reflect on his actions, he did something unexpected. He insisted that I should apologize to my in-laws and then go home alone to think things over. Naturally, I refused. I couldn't admit to things I hadn't said, nor did I need a husband who took his mother's word over his wife's. Tears of frustration welled up in my eyes. Why had I even followed him here? Seeing my distress, Patrick began to panic, but it was too late. Mary watched the unfolding scene with a smug smile, clearly pleased that her scheme was working. I spoke coldly to Patrick. Next time, marry a younger, more docile daughter-in-law. Maybe then you'll have children and be happier. Mary's response was sharp and cutting. Pamela, why don't you go back to your parents' house? A daughter-in-law is ultimately an outsider. I can't see you as a family. You're not charming at all, so please leave quickly. Her words stung, but they also cemented my resolve. I'd leave even without you telling me. I'd like to see someone who can actually get along with someone as twisted as you, I retorted and turned to walk out of the restaurant. Patrick remained silent, his head buried in his hands. Just as I reached the exit, I heard someone calling my name. It was Diane and her husband. Pamela, wait, Diane said, clearly distressed. I can't stand it anymore. Mom and Amanda haven't changed at all. I knew the gossip about you was false. Diane's acknowledgement of the truth amidst the chaos brought me a small sense of solace as she continued, indicating she was ready to cut ties with the toxicity. This moment of solidarity, though small and coming during a time of overwhelming emotion, hinted at some support within the family, something I desperately needed right then. As I stood there digesting Diane's words, my phone rang, flashing Mary's name. I sighed. What now? But before I could answer, Patrick's name replaced hers on the display. Muttering under my breath, I watched Diane and her husband exchange knowing looks. Pamela, you might want to go back to the restaurant. You might see something interesting, Diane suggested, her eyes hinting at a twist I hadn't anticipated. They left, looking oddly pleased with themselves. I hesitated, but curiosity won over my desire to distance myself from the drama. When I finally answered Patrick's call, his voice was frantic, tinged with panic. Pamela, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was all a lie. I'll send the divorce papers later, he blurted out, but then quickly pleaded, Wait, can't you come back? Please, it's a lifetime request. His almost childish plea almost made me laugh, but remembering Diane's cryptic hint, I decided to return to the restaurant. Upon arriving, I was met by an unexpected scene. A crowd was gathered around Patrick's table where a local TV announcer, Mary's favorite, was speaking into a microphone. The atmosphere was electric with tension. Mary was stumbling over her words, clearly struggling to explain herself. No, that's not it. It's a misunderstanding, she stammered. Patrick and Amanda looked both awkward and uneasy, clearly not prepared for this turn of events. The announcer, microphone in hand, pressed Mary further. You loudly declared in the restaurant that Pamela is an outsider and should leave. What did you mean by that? Please explain in detail. Meanwhile, Diane's husband, along with others who had been offended by the earlier events, had quietly left the scene. It all seemed surreal. As I stood there, somewhat dumbfounded, I pieced together that this had turned into a public spectacle, possibly being broadcasted. I realized then that I had forgotten to confirm the reservation details amidst the initial chaos. As I tried to make sense of the situation, a staff member approached, noting my confusion. It's been quite a day, hasn't it? They remarked, explaining that a TV recording had been scheduled at the restaurant that very day, which explained the unexpected media presence. The entire ordeal had unexpectedly played out on live television, casting the family drama in a stark, unfiltered light for all to see. As I processed the unfolding events, I couldn't help but feel a mix of vindication and disbelief at the bizarre turn my evening had taken. Although the dining area offered some privacy, conversations could still be easily overheard. Just after I stepped out, a famous TV announcer approached Mary with a beaming smile, ready to conduct an interview. Mary, an avid fan, was visibly excited. An interview? Absolutely, she exclaimed enthusiastically. The topic was daughter-in-law and mother-in-law relationships. We heard there was a heated argument earlier, and the daughter-in-law left in tears. Can you tell us what happened? The announcer asked, putting Mary on the spot. Caught off guard by this direct question, Mary and Amanda's complexions paled, clearly at a loss to openly discuss the embarrassing truth about how they had manipulated the situation to alienate their son's wife. Patrick, spotting me from a distance, made a desperate plea. "Pamela, please, I can't let this shame be known. It was all a misunderstanding," he implored, looking utterly defeated. By then, my feelings for him had evaporated. Mary tried to smooth things over with a strained smile. "Oh, we usually call each other Pamela. Pamela, come over here," she beckoned. As I approached, the microphone was directed at me. "You say you call each other Pamela, but how does the daughter-in-law view her mother-in-law?" the announcer asked. "I've never been called that," I replied calmly. "I've been called unpatriotic several times for not having children, though that's due to Patrick and I not feeling ready or confident enough to start a family. We haven't even tried for over 2 years. That's what I was always told was grounds for divorce," I recounted. I continued, sharing how Patrick had initially supported me when I first fell ill and had to take a leave from work. I appreciated his kindness and followed him here, hoping a change of environment might help, but this is the result. By then, I was out of tears and detachment had taken their place. Seeing Mary and Amanda looking embarrassed and pitiful brought a small measure of satisfaction. As I stood there, prepared for the possibility of this being broadcast nationwide, I couldn't help but reflect on the surreal day. Watching Mary's distressed expression as I mentioned the broadcast, I couldn't help but smile. "Well, since the daughter-in-law is considered an outsider, I guess I should leave. Goodbye," I said, savoring the moment as I exited the restaurant, ignoring the shouts and commotion that followed me out. The day had been long and fraught, but in that final moment, I felt a profound release. Walking away from that chaotic scene, I felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. Although Mary and her family managed to prevent the broadcast of the footage, the incident had already caused quite a stir locally, becoming a hot topic among our relatives and acquaintances. The story of what had transpired spread quickly, fueling gossip and speculation. In the aftermath, I returned to my room, packed my belongings, and moved back to my parents' house. I sent the divorce papers to Patrick, but his response was delayed, prompting me to consider involving a lawyer. To my surprise, Patrick soon appeared at my parents' doorstep. My father, Peter, who is typically a composed individual, took charge of the situation with a firm hand. Patrick offered a heartfelt apology. He expressed his intention to sever ties with his own family and promised to trust only in me going forward. However, his promises now seemed hollow. Too little, too late. Peter, visibly upset by the years of distress Patrick had caused me, didn't mince words. "Why didn't you realize this sooner? What have you done to Pamela all these years? Just sign the divorce papers and leave," he instructed sternly. With regret etched across his face, Patrick handed over the divorce papers, his handwriting shaky and difficult to read. Despite the initial difficulty, the papers were processed successfully. It later emerged that Amanda had been the real cause of her infertility, a fact she had wrongly attributed to her husband. Now, on the brink of her divorce, she no longer visited her in-laws. Patrick went back to live with his mother Mary in their small hometown. They likely faced lingering uncomfortable rumors, but that chapter of my life was closed. In the time that followed, life took a more positive turn for me. I reconnected with a classmate from my hometown, and we married. Our relationship was filled with joy, and we soon welcomed a child. We now have a 2-year-old daughter, and I am expecting our second child. My new mother-in-law is truly angelic, supportive and kind, everything Mary was not. Life is unpredictable, but at this moment, I am living a fulfilling and happy life, surrounded by love and support that I once thought was beyond my reach. As I glanced around the nearly bare room, I asked, "Are you ready to leave yet?" A sigh escaped from my companion. "Just waiting for the movers," they replied, a tinge of relief in their voice. "Honestly, I won't miss seeing you around, and the way you changed the locks as if I'd try to break in was a bit much." I had always been curious about why such extreme precautions were necessary, but now it seemed almost irrelevant. When I first met Kevin, he was a quiet man, always concerned about others' opinions. Post-marriage, he became the epitome of a henpecked spouse. A week after I settled into my new home, Kevin appeared desperate. "It's me, open up," he urged. I pretended not to recognize him, meeting his panic with feigned ignorance. "I'm Carol, a 34-year-old working part-time 4 days a week. It's been 3 years since Kevin and I tied the knot. We don't have children, but I believe we could still find happiness together. In our marriage's early days, we'd stay up late discussing our dreams for the future. Both of us were novices in love, cautious at first, but I thought there was genuine enjoyment in each other's company. Let's be that couple that grows old together," I suggested one night. "Yeah, I like that idea. Maybe, 3 kids? A boy and a girl?" "That's exactly what I was thinking," he agreed. These light-hearted exchanges were delightful to someone who had little interest in love or marriage. Meeting Kevin was unexpected. We met at a party I attended out of obligation, not enthusiasm. He seemed to be there under similar pretenses, and we bonded over our shared disinterest, gradually becoming friends. At the time, he was serious, a bit reserved but always kind to me, which I found quite charming. Then, unexpectedly, he proposed. "Carol, will you marry me? I want to make you happy." "What? But we're not even dating yet." "Right," he acknowledged, his proposal unwavering. His unexpected question didn't push me away. Instead, it made me consider the possibility of a life with him. "If you're okay with me, then yes, I accept." His joy was palpable, and in that moment, I remembered why life sometimes throws us these unforeseen fateful curves. When Kevin proposed, I wholeheartedly believed that marrying him would lead to a happy future. We rushed into marriage, tying the knot just 2 months after our first meeting. Given our limited experience in romance, our journey was clumsy at times, but that added to our adventure. However, about a month after we moved in together, I began to notice a stark difference between my expectations and the reality of our marriage. One day, Kevin approached me with a serious look, more intense than usual. "Carol, there's something I need to discuss," he said solemnly. I was taken aback when he asked me to consider quitting my job to become a homemaker. This request was unexpected. He had never expressed any dissatisfaction with my working before, and it marked the beginning of a confusing shift in his behavior. "Why would you ask that?" I questioned, puzzled by his sudden change. "When you work, it makes me feel unneeded," he confessed. "Did someone suggest that to you?" I asked, trying to understand his sudden insecurity. "No, but at my company, all the other men's wives stay at home. It's just how things are there," he explained. I had been clear from the start of our marriage that I intended to keep working, especially since saving money was crucial for our plans. Kevin's new insistence baffled me. "But we agreed I would continue working after we got married, didn't we?" I reminded him. "I know, but as my wife, I hoped you'd consider my feelings," he responded, his concern more about fitting social norms than our mutual happiness. "Why not just pretend I've quit? There's no need for me actually to leave my job," I suggested, expressing my reluctance to give up my career. However, Kevin seemed increasingly worried about how others perceived him. "If things don't change, I'll be ridiculed by my colleagues and bosses. I'm supposed to be the head of this household, aren't I? Please, just do as I ask," he pressed, unwilling to listen to my reasoning. "I can't make such a decision immediately. Let me think about it," I said, needing time to weigh my options. "All right, but please decide soon," he urged, his tone urgent. I knew I couldn't let this issue drag on, fearing what might follow if I didn't act decisively. Seeking advice, I turned to my boss, Madison. She had worked as an administrative assistant since high school and had faced a similar situation with a controlling ex-husband, eventually leading to her divorce. Now, she was a dedicated single mother and someone I greatly admired. That must have been tough, I mused, considering divorce as I reflected on her strength and resilience. Navigating the early days of our marriage, Kevin and I found ourselves at a complex juncture. It's tricky since we're newlyweds, I pondered, contemplating the implications of quitting my job. I haven't fully thought this through, but leaving my position will make it difficult to find a replacement. I shared my concerns with Madison, my boss, who had become a mentor to me. I don't plan to quit immediately, I explained. I'm looking for a way to keep working, if possible. Perhaps we could maintain my current part-time schedule for the time being. Switching to full-time might draw too much attention. That's a wise approach, Madison agreed, supportive of my decision to negotiate with Kevin. If he still objects, we could propose reducing my hours officially to part-time. That sounds like a sensible plan. Remember, you can always count on me for advice. I'm here to support you, Madison reassured me, offering a lifeline in the turbulent sea of my marital issues. Thank you, I appreciate your support, I replied, grateful for her guidance. Our conversation deepened, and I discovered that Madison's ex-husband had also changed drastically after their marriage, a situation eerily similar to mine. This revelation was eye-opening. I hadn't considered that some men might transform so completely after marriage, becoming almost unrecognizable from the person they once were. Viewing my circumstances through this lens, I wondered if I had been misled. Despite numerous discussions, Kevin and I were at an impasse. Isn't it a woman's role after marriage to support her husband and manage the household? He argued, clinging to outdated norms. What era are you living in? Nowadays, it's common for both spouses to work, I countered, shocked by his archaic views. Maybe for other couples, but we're different, you see that, don't you? He tried to persuade me. I understand where you're coming from, but I can't agree with it. I stood my ground, asking him to consider my perspective. Kevin persisted daily, pressuring me to quit my job. Despite his efforts, they fell short. I consulted with Madison and decided to resign officially. However, in reality, I continued working part-time 4 days a week. Thankfully, Madison was sympathetic to my situation and agreed to reduce my hours. I've resigned from my job at the company just as you wanted, I told Kevin, keeping up appearances. Really? Thank you. Now I can feel more secure about my position at work, he responded, relieved yet oblivious to the truth. By then, it was clear Kevin was primarily concerned with how others perceived him. His abrupt transformation left me bewildered. I chose to deceive him, continuing to work secretly in hopes of preserving our relationship and my independence. But I soon realized that my hopes for a fresh start were misplaced. Despite our new beginning, Kevin continued to exert his dominance and vent his frustrations on me. One day, he sprung a sudden request on me. A junior colleague is coming over today. I need you to host, he said abruptly. I had no idea, I responded, caught off guard. Sorry, it was a last-minute decision. Just keep it simple, please. Get everything ready. Before I could say another word, he hung up. Determined to fulfill the request, I prepared drinks and snacks for the guests. However, when Kevin arrived, he was displeased. Didn't I ask you to prepare for today? He chided. You mentioned just keeping it basic, and you took that literally. This reflects poorly on me. I need you to fulfill your role as a wife properly. What exactly does that mean? I did my best. Is there an issue with what I prepared? I asked, genuinely confused by his dissatisfaction. No, not really, he muttered, his expression unreadable, a stark contrast to the person I once knew. From then on, Kevin began inviting guests over almost every week. While he reveled in the social gatherings, he expected me to be on standby, prepared for anything. It seemed he was trying to impress everyone with his capabilities as a husband. Kevin, having guests over every week seems excessive, I ventured one day. No, it's fine. everyone enjoys it, and you should support my decisions. It's your duty as my wife, Carol. But maintaining such a lifestyle was also expensive. How exactly am I supposed to manage it? I asked. Oh, stop complaining. He would dismiss any question I had as nagging and avoided giving a direct answer. Every morning, I woke up early to prepare meals, make lunch sandwiches, and see Kevin off, all while keeping his suit ready for the day. On days I worked part-time from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., there was barely any time to rest. Despite the busyness, I cherished my job. Working often felt like a welcome respite. Carol, you seem tired lately. Are you okay? My coworker Deborah asked one day, noticing my fatigue. Yeah, a bit, actually, I admitted. Let me know if there's anything I can do. I'm here to help in any way I can. Thank you, Deborah. You've been such a reliable support. Unlike Kevin, Deborah understood the deterioration in how I was being treated. She was aware of my secret part-time job and had kept it hidden from Kevin. I appreciate everything, Deborah. I expressed my gratitude. Bill mentioned it, but I never imagined Kevin would behave like this, she confessed. Neither did I. I've tried talking to him, but he won't listen, and we can hardly have a meaningful conversation anymore. I'm sorry, if only I were stronger, I sighed, feeling overwhelmed. Don't be too hard on yourself. You're managing work and household tasks admirably. I appreciate all your help. I'm glad to hear that, I replied, grateful for her kindness. Living with Deborah's support had been nothing but a positive experience for me, a stark contrast to the strain at home. However, Kevin seemed uncomfortable with how close Deborah and I had become. This discomfort led him to make a shocking and sudden decision. Where's Deborah? Mom's gone, I questioned, puzzled by her absence. What do you mean gone? I asked, my confusion growing. Mom's getting older, and I thought it would be best for her to be in a facility, he replied nonchalantly. You actually placed her in a home? My voice cracked, barely hiding my disbelief. Yeah, just finished settling her into the new place. Now I have the house to myself, he stated as if he had just completed a routine chore. I was at my parents' home when this happened, and the fact that he unilaterally decided to place his mother in a facility shocked me. She was older, yes, but not to the extent that she required full-time care. It became clear to me that he had sent Deborah away to have the house to himself. When I visited Deborah at the facility, she looked surprised yet resigned. I'm sorry it had to come to this, I apologized. No, it's not your fault, Deborah reassured me. I never expected him to go to such lengths. I'm afraid of what he might do if I resist. I'll miss you, but I'll manage. If you need anything, you're always welcome here, she added, trying to offer some comfort. Thank you, I replied, feeling the weight of the situation. Afterward, we moved from our previous home into my in-laws' house. Despite managing the household diligently, Kevin never acknowledged my efforts or showed any gratitude. The idea of having children, once a topic of eager discussion, now seemed completely out of reach. Kevin often disregarded me, preferring to spend his time away from home. Additionally, he began imposing arbitrary rules. No matter how late he returned, I was required to stay awake until his arrival. If I happened to wake up later than him in the morning, he would become upset. What time will you be home today? I asked one evening. I'm not sure. Just stay up until I get back, okay? He instructed. One day, after a similar exchange, when Kevin returned home, I noticed something unusual. As I took his suit to hang it up, the air was fragrant, a sweet feminine scent that was unfamiliar to me, as I didn't wear perfume. It was unmistakable evidence of an affair. Whenever he came home late, I would catch whiffs of the same perfume. That day, he unusually suggested I go to bed before him, raising my suspicions even further. Quietly, I went to the living room and overheard their conversation. Oh, she's clueless. When are you going to leave her? A woman's voice asked. I'll kick her out soon enough, Kevin's voice responded clearly. Their voices carried easily, especially the woman's, which was quite loud. From their discussion, it was evident that their relationship had been ongoing for some time. While the incident with the perfume didn't shock me, it left me feeling utterly disgusted. Kevin was still technically my husband, and despite my hopes for a turnaround, his treatment of me remained harsh and unchanging. As we approached the 3-year mark of our marriage, he sprung another surprise. "I have a business trip the day after tomorrow. I need you to get everything ready," he announced abruptly. "That's very short notice," I replied, the timing and suddenness raising my suspicions. "I'll be away for about 4 days. Please make sure my clothes are prepared." I couldn't help but suspect his claim of a business trip was a cover for time spent with his mistress. I remembered a conversation with a colleague's wife at a company gathering who had warned me, "Be cautious if he suddenly mentions a business trip. Our company doesn't even have those." Her words echoed in my mind as I pieced things together. My suspicions had been confirmed earlier when I found a chat on his mobile phone, accidentally left in the living room, detailing how he had taken paid leave for this so-called trip. This discovery marked a turning point for me and signaled the beginning of the end of our marriage. Armed with proof of his affair, I prepared to confront him with divorce papers upon his return. However, it was Kevin who made the first move. "Are you ready to leave? The movers will be here soon," he said coldly as soon as he returned home. He instructed me to vacate the house before he got back. "I need you to be gone before I get back," he demanded. "Why are you saying this all of a sudden?" I countered, shocked by his blunt directive. "That's exactly what I said. You can't spring this on me and expect me to leave immediately. Then I'll wait a bit but start preparing to leave," he replied, dismissing my objections. "Goodbye." I never imagined that my once timid, overly concerned husband would transform into such a domineering partner, but this was the final straw. The future I once envisioned with him now felt like a distant memory. Living with such a man, I couldn't envision a bright future ahead. What comes next? I wondered aloud. This could get interesting. Has the mover arrived yet? "No need to rush. They should be here soon," came the reply. "Oh, and I almost forgot to mention I'm changing the locks on the house," he added almost casually. "All right, got it," I responded, my heart sinking. "The thought of not having to see your face again is a relief," were his parting words after nearly 3 years of marriage. Convinced our relationship was irreversibly over, I swiftly left the premises soon after. I instructed my lawyer to file for divorce. Despite our circumstances, my husband boldly posted pictures with his mistress on social media, an act of brazen audacity. How could he be so reckless, not realizing he was providing even more evidence of his affair? Even our mutual friends noticed his strange behavior, marking the public unraveling of what we once shared. After leaving my in-laws' home, I transitioned back to full-time work and moved into a high-rise apartment in the suburbs, a place I had long dreamed of living. The apartment was spacious, ideal for one, and felt wonderfully liberating without Kevin's presence. About a month after settling in, I was jolted one morning by the doorbell. Peering through the monitor, I was stunned to see Kevin standing outside. "Hey, it's me, Kevin. Open up, Carol," he called out, his voice presumptuous and demanding. His sudden appearance and the entitlement in his tone were beyond my comprehension. Deciding to feign ignorance, I thought it might be more amusing than outright rejecting him. Who are you? I'm sorry, but I don't know you," I responded through the intercom. "Don't tell me you've forgotten your husband's face. I'm not married. I think you've mistaken me for someone else," I continued, watching as desperation seemed to wash over him, his face a shadow of the timid man I once knew. "Please, just listen. I've been deceived and I need Carol's help," he pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I'm not obligated to assist you. If you persist, I'll have to call the police. Seriously, after all, I don't know you," I retorted, steadfast in my resolve to treat him as a stranger. Kevin must have thought I would always be there to solve his problems, but I was no longer the person who tolerated such dependency. Yet, he remained stubborn, unwilling to relent. "That's it. You made this mess, so it's up to you to fix it. You don't have to be so tough on me," he whimpered. Oh, and by the way, you can't stay at your parents' place anymore, he added abruptly. What do you mean? Do you know whose name the house is under? I questioned, surprised by his statement. No, but it used to belong to Deborah. Now it's in my name, I explained, revealing a significant change he was unaware of. Kevin had insisted I leave when I confided in Deborah, which visibly upset and disappointed her. I can't believe my son has turned out like this. I'm truly sorry, especially after all the help you've given us, Deborah had said during one of our conversations. Deborah, you're divorcing Kevin, aren't you? She had asked. Yes, it's for the best, I confirmed. In that case, I'll transfer the house to you, she offered, making a decision that took both me and presumably Kevin by surprise. Why would Deborah transfer their rights to their in-laws' house to me? Kevin would have been puzzled by such a turn of events. Unbeknownst to him, he had been living with his mistress throughout all this turmoil. That's the situation. Understand and leave promptly, I concluded, shutting down any further attempts at reconciliation or intrusion into my life. We likely won't cross paths again, but I made it clear to him if he persisted, I would not hesitate to call the police. With that firm warning, he finally relented and left. The divorce proceeded as planned, and I received the settlement we agreed upon. As it turned out, Kevin had been misled and financially exploited by his mistress. Moreover, the divorce settlement amounted to approximately $410,000. His mistress had promptly abandoned him when the money dried up, but I was resolved not to let matters end there. I hired both a lawyer and a detective to ensure that all financial claims against him were thoroughly pursued. Additionally, I was seeking a further divorce settlement claim which looked to secure over $22,000 more. Furthermore, the ownership of the house was officially transferred to me. I had insisted that Kevin vacate the premises, and though he initially resisted, legal proceedings left him with no choice but to comply. As for his current whereabouts, I remained blissfully unaware and frankly uninterested. His company eventually caught wind of the photos he had posted with his mistress on social media. Unable to endure the scrutiny and his past facade of an extravagant lifestyle, Kevin chose to resign voluntarily. This outcome seemed inevitable, given his true character. If I had one last thing to say about the entire ordeal, it would be this. I don't dwell on it. I am divorced now, but I view it as a learning opportunity, an opening to move forward positively. My bond with Deborah endures, and I intend to focus on my career independently and relish life as a single individual, embracing all the freedom and opportunities it offers. Hello, my name is Linda. I am 37 years old and work from home. My husband Jonathan and I have been happily married for 5 years. Although we don't have children yet, our dual-income household has allowed us to enjoy life's little pleasures like traveling and dining out. Now that I work remotely, I've taken on the household responsibilities, which lets Jonathan concentrate fully on his career. Over the weekends, he lends a hand at home, and together we found a nice rhythm to our marriage. Jonathan and I first met at a group blind date. His warm, inviting smile caught my attention right away. After dating for 3 years, we decided to get married. Jonathan has continued to be a rock of support, always lifting my spirits with his endearing smile. Despite the joys we share, our marriage faces challenges, notably from my in-laws. Jonathan's family owns a thriving pasta shop that his father established 17 years ago after quitting his corporate job. The business has flourished, opening several branches across the city. When I first met Jonathan's parents, they were clad in flashy designer clothes, which seemed more about making an impression than reflecting their personal style. Our initial encounter was when Jonathan and I visited to share the news of our engagement. Right from the start, I sensed their disdain. They made it clear that any daughter-in-law would suffice as long as she could manage household duties and stay out of trouble. Yet they also hinted that I might be lacking in fortune, which was quite blunt. Jonathan stood up for me immediately, which led to a slight improvement in their behavior. It was clear they were forthright people, perhaps a common trait among those in the culinary business, especially pasta shop owners. Luckily, Jonathan is consistently supportive, offering reassurance and standing by my side. Despite the security Jonathan and I share in our relationship, knowing that we can rely on each other even if I were to lose my job, the interactions with his parents occasionally strain our happiness. However, I've chosen not to let their opinions affect me deeply, especially since Jonathan has repeatedly apologized for their rude behavior. He has reassured me that our dealings with them can be limited to significant family gatherings. It seems Jonathan has had a long-standing strained relationship with his parents. I learned that his father, a stubborn man who once struggled in a conventional job, became rather arrogant after his pasta shop took off. He would often interfere in Jonathan's career decisions, demanding respect due to his role as the family's financial provider. Jonathan's discomfort around his parents led him to move out when he started college. Although he is grateful that the profits from the pasta shop helped fund his education, enabling him to land a job at a prestigious company, he remains distant from them. He hopes to repay them for their financial support but prefers to keep his interactions minimal. Since our marriage, I've barely met with my in-laws, a distance maintained partly because Jonathan and I don't yet have children, which has allowed us to avoid frequent family meetings. We've been content in our married life, but lately my in-laws' business has suffered financially. Previously, a pasta shop could thrive on good food alone despite a gruff owner, but times have changed, with online reviews and social media now playing a significant role in shaping a business's reputation. Their shop has been hit with numerous negative reviews, complaints about the owner's curt demeanor, and the untidy service from the waitstaff have become common. It appears their initial success led to complacency, which is now costing them dearly in terms of customer satisfaction and business viability. Despite the initial success of their pasta shops, my in-laws' business took a steep downturn. Their dishes, once popular, began to be unfavorably compared to instant ramen. Negative reviews multiplied quickly, damaging their reputation severely. Unwilling to adapt to changing times, they persisted with outdated methods and attitudes, which inevitably led to the closure of their shops, including the flagship location. Realizing the severity of their predicament, they uncharacteristically sought help from their son, my husband Jonathan. In a desperate plea, they said, "Jonathan, please help us. At this rate, we'll end up on the streets." Jonathan had seen this coming and responded with a mix of frustration and wisdom. "It didn't work out, did it? I warned you that arrogance would have consequences. You must understand that customers are paramount, and if you treat them carelessly, it will come back to haunt you. You dismissed my advice as naive before, but this mess is of your own making. You need to reflect on your actions." His words, though stern, shocked me. It was unlike the kind-hearted Jonathan I knew, yet I could sense his deep love and concern for his parents. His firmness was a testament to his admirable character, making me fall for him all over again. Despite their plea, Jonathan firmly told them that relying on us wouldn't solve the root issue, which was their attitude and business approach. Crushed by his blunt refusal, they left, only to return a month later, looking defeated and stripped of their luxury items. "Even after selling all our branded goods in the car, the debt is overwhelming. Please, Jonathan, we don't have anyone else to turn to," they begged, their pride swallowed in their desperation. As my husband stood there, arms crossed, contemplating what to do next, I felt a complex mix of emotions. While I had never been particularly fond of my in-laws, seeing them so humbled and desperate stirred a mix of pity and reluctance in me. The situation underscored the complexities of family ties and responsibilities, challenging us to find a balance between support and enabling poor decisions. Seeing my in-laws in such dire straits stirred something within me, compelling me to suggest, "Jonathan, what about sending them a monthly allowance?" My suggestion caught both my husband and his parents off guard. They looked at us with a mix of surprise and disbelief. "Linda, are you sure?" Jonathan asked, his voice tinged with astonishment. Yes, I affirmed. You've always wanted to repay them for helping you through college, right? Jonathan hesitated, then nodded, recalling his past intentions. Well, I might have mentioned something like that. At this point, his parents, seizing the moment, pleaded once more, their heads bowed deeply. Jonathan, please, we'll work hard to pay off our debts. Can you at least support our living expenses? After a brief moment of contemplation, Jonathan agreed. Initially, he decided to transfer $3,000 monthly to them. However, feeling a sense of urgency to help them stabilize and rebuild their lives, I suggested, maybe we should adjust that amount to $3,000 a month, Jonathan. He was hesitant at first, telling me that $3,000 was enough, but I insisted. My career had blossomed beyond my regular job. I had become quite adept at investing in stocks and real estate. Over the years, I had accumulated significant wealth, enough to purchase luxury apartments and earn a substantial income from these rentals. Unbeknownst to my in-laws, my annual earnings had reached about $580,000, giving me considerable financial flexibility. I chose to keep these details private, especially from my in-laws, as I funneled a bit more money to support them through Jonathan. This was as much for his peace of mind as it was for their financial aid. The in-laws, overwhelmed by our support, expressed their heartfelt gratitude during one of their visits. Jonathan, thank you so much. Thanks to you, our life is slowly stabilizing, they acknowledged. Witnessing their genuine appreciation and seeing them start to turn their lives around was deeply satisfying. It underscored the impact of generosity and the importance of family support, even in the most challenging times. The gratitude from Jonathan's parents initially made him visibly happy, and we both hoped it would motivate them to find jobs and start repaying their debts. However, a month passed and they still hadn't secured any employment. A more pressing issue soon emerged. They began visiting our house frequently during weekdays. Our food expenses are mounting, Linda. Could you possibly spare us something to eat? They would ask, starting to come around lunchtime. Initially, they simply ate and left, but recently they've taken to lounging on the sofa after meals and even requesting desserts. Is this arrangement working for you, or would you like some adjustments? I inquired one day, feeling the strain on both our pantry and my patients. My work was beginning to suffer from their interruptions. I have work too, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't stay too long, I told the in-laws as my professional responsibilities were increasingly compromised by their extended visits. The in-laws exchanged looks and laughed dismissively. Work? Aren't you always at home? If you're going to lie, at least make it more believable, they scoffed, chuckling among themselves. Perhaps because of their long history in the food and beverage industry, they seemed unable to grasp the concept of remote work. I tried explaining it to them in detail. Remote work means I operate from home using my computer to complete tasks just as I would in an office setting, I clarified. But they brushed it off with a wave of the hand. We don't understand all this computer stuff, they admitted, showing no interest in trying to comprehend further. No matter how clearly I outlined my busy schedule, they seemed indifferent. Linda, we're out of tea. Hurry up and go buy some. Don't you have any snacks? Prepare some rice crackers or something, they demanded increasingly, as if I had nothing else to occupy my time. Their criticism became personal and harsh. Such a useless daughter-in-law. For a housewife, you're inconsiderate, they criticized, not realizing the impact of their words or promises to work and repay their debts. This situation highlighted a growing tension and a stark misunderstanding of boundaries and professional commitments within our family dynamics. Despite their assurances that they were earnestly searching for jobs, my in-laws continued to encroach on our home during the day, always making sure to leave before Jonathan returned from work. Perhaps they felt a twinge of guilt for relying on the financial support he provided, or maybe they wanted to avoid awkward questions about their job search progress. Is this situation manageable, or do you need any changes? I eventually asked as I reached my breaking point. Even though I was contributing a significant amount of the money we gave them, I couldn't fathom why I deserved to be treated with such disrespect. One day, driven to the edge, I confronted the in-laws with a firm request, "Please leave now." They were shocked, not expecting such a direct challenge from me. But quickly their shock turned to anger, their faces flushing with indignation. "Who do you think you are? A mere wife giving orders to your husband's parents?" They snapped back. "And you're just a housewife dependent on Jonathan's income. How many times do we have to tell you that we're not interested in your delusional stories about working?" They continued, their voices rising. I stood my ground, frustration and disbelief building up. "I'm not just a housewife. Enough of your outdated views," I retorted. Then, with malice in their eyes, they struck back with a hurtful suggestion. "You should just leave this place," one of them said sharply. "What?" I exclaimed, shocked by their audacity. "That's right, it's because of you that Jonathan's remittance to us is so small. You know we're sending you $3,500 a month, right?" "What do you mean it's not enough?" they argued, clearly missing the point of financial responsibility. Their words left me speechless. It seemed that they were the type who, no matter how much you helped, would never see it as enough. Their sense of entitlement had blinded them to the reality of our efforts and the strain their demands were putting on our lives. As I stood there, shocked by the turn of events, my in-laws glared at me with chilling disdain. "Hey, how long are you planning to stand there daydreaming? Pack your bags already, huh? Don't you understand what we're telling you? You are dense, aren't you? We're telling you to stop leeching off our son for money. Get lost, you parasite of a wife," they sneered venomously. Their words cut deep, and I realized that any further conversation was futile. Resigned, I replied with unexpected calmness. "Understood. I'll pack my things and leave." To my surprise, my declaration seemed to stun them momentarily. They then smiled smugly, convinced they had secured a victory. "Now our lives will finally be secure," they chuckled among themselves. If it was just the three of us, Jonathan and us, everything would have gone smoothly from the start. Ignoring their hurtful remarks, I began to pack my belongings. "I'll disappear as quickly as possible," I resolved silently, watching them leave with a look of satisfaction. That night when Jonathan came home, I explained everything that had transpired. He was more stunned than angry. "Linda, I'm truly sorry," he apologized sincerely. "It's okay, now I realize they'll never change. It's good to know there's no point in trying anymore," I consoled him. Together, we decided to move out. A couple of weeks later, the in-laws called to check on the situation. "So what's the situation now? Have you left the house?" "I've been trying to contact Jonathan about the remittances, but he seems too busy to answer the phone," they inquired, barely concealing their eagerness. "We've already left, so you can rest easy." "You won't see me in front of you anymore," I replied coolly. I could hear the glee in their voices as they responded, "Ah, I see. Finally, our son can get rid of the burden that was you." Hearing their laughter, I realized how liberating it was to finally be free from their manipulative grip. Confident in the strength and resilience of our small family unit, and ready to start anew without the weight of their expectations and judgments. Now, with the promise of increased remittances from Jonathan, my in-laws were visibly pleased, laughing about how their lives would now become easier. As they continued to ridicule and celebrate over the phone, a sigh escaped me, and I responded with sharp clarity. "You had a lot to say about me, didn't you? It might be enlightening for you to realize who the real parasite is." Hearing my words, their tone shifted to anger. "With that attitude, you truly are a hopeless daughter-in-law. Well, you're probably not even our daughter-in-law anymore. You might as well live a poor and lonely life," they snapped back. Their delusions were so profound that I saw no point in correcting them. I offered some non-committal replies and ended the call. Shortly after, the phone rang again. "Do you need something else?" I asked as soon as I picked up. My in-laws, now sounding panicked, bombarded me with questions. "What the hell is going on? When we went to the apartment where Jonathan lives, someone else was living there. You know something, don't you? Even if you two broke up, tell me where Jonathan is," they demanded. Jonathan, who had been listening in, took the phone from me. "I've always been with Linda," he stated firmly. "Why are you with that woman, and why have the remittances to us stopped?" They continued to interrogate. "Maybe because you insulted and tried to drive away my precious wife. I won't forgive anyone who hurts her, even if it's my parents," Jonathan replied, his voice steady and resolved. "Besides, you never listened when Linda tried to explain her job and her contributions. Did you even realize that Linda was sending you more money than I was?" "Is that true, Linda? Were you sending them $3,500 every month because you wanted them to pay off their debts quickly?" Jonathan asked, turning to me. "Yes," I confirmed. "I wanted to help speed up their debt repayment, yet all they did was insult me, calling me useless." "I won't be sending anything to such ungrateful parents," Jonathan declared, ending the call. With that, we both felt a chapter close, a chapter filled with unappreciated sacrifices and undue criticism. It was a painful but necessary step toward protecting our peace and prioritizing our well-being as a couple. My husband declared firmly, "I'm cutting ties with you as a family now. Deal with your debts on your own." In a moment of desperation, my in-law pleaded, "Wait, I had no idea Linda was contributing so much. Can you forgive us if we apologize? Maybe then you can send money again." "It's too late, just give it up," Jonathan replied, his voice resolute as he ended the call, and then blocked my in-law's number, ensuring that our paths would no longer cross. From what we later heard through relatives, our in-laws were forced to sell their house but still couldn't clear their debts. They now live in a rundown apartment, working low-wage jobs to scrape by. When they were prosperous with their restaurant, they reportedly treated their relatives with arrogance. Once their fortunes turned, they sought help from these same relatives, who chose not to assist them, leaving them isolated and struggling in poverty. Jonathan and I had extended as much support as we could manage. We can't cover for them endlessly. It's a consequence of their actions. I doubt they'll change their ways or attitudes, and it seems they are resigned to live with the results of their choices. On a brighter note, Jonathan and I continue to cherish our time together as a working couple. A year later, unexpectedly, I became pregnant. Although it was surprising, we are deeply grateful for this blessing. Together with my beloved husband, we look forward to raising our precious child and embracing the new chapter of our lives filled with hope and joy. Does this revised narrative meet your expectations, or is there anything else you'd like to adjust?